Good morning. Good morning. Thank you. The reading this morning is from the Gospel of Luke, chapter 8. They sailed into the region of the Gerasenes, which is across the lake from Galilee. When Jesus stepped ashore, he was met by a demon-possessed man from the town. For a long time, this man had not worn clothes or lived in a house, but had lived in the tombs. When he saw Jesus, he cried out and fell at his feet, shouting at the top of his voice, "What do you want with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? I beg you, don't torture me." For Jesus had commanded the impure spirit to come out of the man. Many times it had seized him, and though he was chained hand and foot and kept under guard, he had broken his chains and had been driven by the demon into solitary places. Jesus asked him, "What is your name?" "Legion," he replied, because many demons had gone into him, and they begged Jesus repeatedly not to order them to go into the abyss. A large herd of pigs was feeding there on the hillside. The demons begged Jesus to let them go into the pigs, and he gave them permission. When the demons came out of the man, they went into the pigs, and the herd rushed down the steep bank into the lake and was drowned. When those tending the pigs saw what had happened, they ran off and reported this in the town and countryside, and the people went out to see what had happened. When they came to Jesus, they found the man from whom the demons had gone out sitting at Jesus' feet, dressed and in his right mind, and they were afraid. Those who had seen it told the people how the demon-possessed man had been cured. Then all of the people of the region of the Gerasenes asked Jesus to leave them because they were overcome with fear. So he got into the boat and left. The man from whom the demons had gone out begged to go with him, but Jesus sent him away, saying, "Return home and tell how much God has done for you." So the man went away and told all over town how much Jesus had done for him.
Some weeks ago, I found myself at a Holiday Inn Express for a baseball tournament where I was with one of my children. And it was Dad's job to fill up a water bottle with ice. And so I left the room and filled up the water bottle with ice in the area adjacent to the elevator, and then walked back to room 304, and my heart sank. I left my room key, wallet, and cell phone in the room. Downstairs to the reception desk, stood in line, and I shared back finally with the woman behind the counter that I had unfortunately left my key in the room, and she said, "We're going to need some identification for security purposes." And I shared back with her that I had left my cell phone and my wallet there too. And she said, "I'm sorry, sir, we're gonna have to talk to the manager about this." And I remember looking behind her computer where it was Holiday Inn Express, and the lingo, is stay smart. And I got to thinking, Mark, you are so dumb. And then all of the sudden, do you know, I got rescued. There was a young man who was also behind the desk who worked for the hotel, and he said, "I checked you in a couple of hours ago, and I remember from your driver's license that your middle name is Fulton. I remember that because that was my uncle's name, and he was like a second dad to me." Then I got my room key, and 30 seconds later, I was off. He had remembered my name. And I recall feeling in that strange moment, out of town, such a sense of reassurance that in that moment of confusion, that someone would know my name. The great spiritual writer Henry Nouwen once remarked that the deepest human longing of any human being is to be known. Jesus, in an attempt to know each one of us, desires to know, yes, our name, my name and your name, and even the name of that guy. That guy in the New Testament who was on the outskirts of town alone that no one wanted to deal with. Next January here at Naples UCC, we have a wonderful speaker coming our way, and his recent book is entitled Wayfaring. And this wonderful speaker who is going to be talking serves in mental health capacities and is duly appointed faculty at both Duke Divinity School and Duke University Medical School, and he is a psychiatrist. His name is Dr. Warren Kinghorn. And in this book, Wayfaring, he spends a lot of time and energy unpacking the story of that man, the man that we just heard about. The reason why this is that Legion in the New Testament, his story is here and it's also in Mark's Gospel, Mark 5, verses 1 through 20, is probably the most clear or obvious example of Jesus being in ministry with someone who is mentally ill. In Luke's gospel, it is more than likely the case, given what we know about his condition and given what we know about the history of Rome, that this man, Legion, was struggling from what we would know today as PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. In Mark's gospel, Legion is struggling with another mental health issue. He is cutting himself, what psychiatrists refer to as cutters, or non-suicidal self-mutilating disorder in the DSM-5. And this man, who is sick and in chains and in the outskirts of town, is present, and the Roman Empire has taken an approach to this person that, quite frankly, unfortunately, is still our approach in the year 2025. Which was, here is this mentally ill person. If we cannot fix him, then we must control him, put him in chains. Hence, he is locked up, he's adjacent to the tombs, and he's in the outskirts of town. This mentality toward those who are struggling with mental illness is still going on today. If we can't fix them, then we've got to chain them. The three places in America where there is the most populated number of people with mental illness are Cook County Jail in Chicago, the county jail in Los Angeles, and the Rikers Island Jail up in New York. I mean, we all know that if you can't fix somebody, then you just have to control them or chain them. It's been going on since the days of the Roman Empire. But that is when all of the sudden Jesus showed up and offered something very, very different that Rome had never seen before. Quite radical, frankly. Jesus appears onto the scene and asks an amazing question to this, crazy guy. What is your name? And in that moment, argues Warren Kinghorn and other Bible scholars, Jesus is moving folks away from this mentality of fix them and control them to, I want to get to know you and journey with you. And in asking this man his name, Jesus shares back with him, I want to love you unconditionally, and I want to truly get to know your hurt. For one of the very interesting details of this text that scholars point out, and it's also the same in Mark's gospel, is that when Jesus asks the question, "What is your name?" it is the demons who respond to Jesus' question, "Legion." It is though Jesus not only wants to get to know this man, but also wants to get to know what is making him hurt. And it is in this moment of powerful ministry that the man goes on to be healed. And yes, we are even told toward the end of the scripture passage that Jesus' model of moving from fix and control to knowing and journeying was so radical in the face of the Roman Empire, because this man was feared and unclean, that the next thing that happens to Jesus is he's told, "Jesus, you really better get out of town." What a question. What is your name? Some months ago, I got asked by the Men's New Chapters group here at the church to read a wonderful book and discuss it with them, How to Get to Know a Person by David Brooks. And in that book, Brooks talks about how when we're really seeking to get to know someone and to know what it is that brings them joy and also their hurt and pain, that one of the best things we can do is to intentionally ask a question that is not power-driven. And so Brooks mentions examples of power-driven questions like, where did you go to college? Or what did you do for your career? Or I was at a seminar with other ministers recently, and someone walked up to me and said, "How many members do you have in your church?" All power-driven questions. And it strikes me in this text that Jesus asked such a loving, selfless question with no power behind it to that mentally ill man on the outskirts of town. What is your name? The wonderful theologian Karl Barth used to always say that faithful preachers live with the Bible in one hand and the newspaper in another. And there was a news story that happened recently that I was putting into conversation with this text because the two scenarios were just eerily similar. And it was the story that we've all been reading about that was as tragic as it was just strangely odd. Such conflict of feelings in thinking about it. It was the story of the airplane crash, the 787 Boeing airplane, where there was only one survivor, Mr. Ramesh, who was seated in seat 11A. And in reading about that story, I thought about all the power-driven questions that are being asked of him. You know, you're the only person alive who can tell us how that plane went down. Or did you choose seat 11A because truly it is the safest seat on any Boeing aircraft? Or do you have a responsibility to all the other people on the plane now, given what it was that happened? And my thought was in thinking about this man who has a post-traumatic stress that I would never even be able to imagine. I imagine, however, Jesus approaching this person with none of those power-driven questions, but instead, what is your name? A powerful question that Jesus asked of someone who was hurting and who was struggling with mental illness. And I commend this model of ministry to all who are in ministry with folks who are hurting or may be mentally ill or have family members or friends who are. This embodiment, this posture away from fixing and controlling to knowing and journeying. What is your name? But I do want to end this morning with a personal word for each one of you in a named Coke bottle kind of way. I want to share this with all in the congregation. In America, there are approximately 140 million people who are dealing with some kind of mental health challenge. This means whatever it is for you or someone in your family or a close friend, depression, anxiety, Alzheimer's, something cognitive, fill in the blank. We all know how prevalent it is, and in the midst of it all, it can feel so taboo, so embarrassing, so solitary. I mean, just ask Legion. So lonely. And in the midst of that struggle, part of what I think each one of us cries out is, no one could ever understand the complexities of what it is that I am going through. But it is precisely in that moment that the one who is radical enough, the one who is selfless enough, the one who is thoughtful enough, and the one who is kind enough whispers, "What is your name?"